And in terms of the people who've both coming around the corner, but who we had last year, were there any that stood out for articulating that, I mean, the best of literature, for articulating those concerns?
I think let me speak for myself here, because obviously when we bring in writers, we're thinking about a whole audience,
sure,
and what appeals to people, and what,
no, this is about
what will
you,
be
absolutely.
interesting.
No, I was
but
asking,
I'm going to speak for myself here, in that when we, for example, this year, I'm very excited about Gillian Slovo coming to the festival. As much, I have to admit, for her life experience as her writing, because she, as you know, is the daughter of two very prominent anti-apartheid activists, and has written a memoir about this experience. And also, I mean, recently she co-compiled a play based on verbatim accounts of inmates of Guantanamo Bay and their families and their lawyers. And actually, for me, verbatim theatre is something that I got in, that is part of my work outside of the festival. And so it's something that, for me, will be very interesting to hear. We're bringing graphic novels and pulp fiction to the festival for the first time, and both of which are genres I know precious little about. And I think that's, to me, that's something that's exciting as well, bringing to the festival things that you don't know about. But there's one other element of the festival. I mean, there are several that I'm excited about, but there's a publishing house called McSweeney's, which is a small publishing house based in San Francisco that was set up by Dave Eggers after he won the Pulitzer Prize. And they're a very innovative publisher, and they publish a lot of short fiction, and it's just they're sort of characterized by an openness in what they publish, and it's a style that really appeals to me, and they work with school children in inner cities in America also, and I think this could be something very interesting. I'm really excited that they're coming to the festival this year.
I mean, perhaps to get a bit more, maybe not political, but to anchor what you just said in terms of the expression in literature to the context that we've had for 3 decades in Sri Lanka. There have been a number of studies done on how street theatre, for example, blossomed at the height of the JVP insurrection in the late 80s, when you would have expected that to have died down. But you find unusual events such as that. You found literature in unusual forms, in Roneo paper, in photocopy, handwritten literature, at times of great violence, of anxiety and fear. To anchor what you said in that context, do you not feel that it's not always easy, even via fiction, to articulate truths, as you said, through literature in violence? And if you do agree with that submission, post-war Sri Lanka, do you feel is going to have a blossoming of all genres of literature that you didn't find for reasons during war?
To begin with, I'm certainly not an authority. We are all making sense of what has happened in our country, and I don't think that that's a quick process. I think that takes place over generations even, and that we will express it differently as we understand it in different ways over time. So I don't make any predictions, because I don't know. I don't know for myself, nor do I know for the people around me. But to speak to what you said earlier, yes, I do think it's difficult. And I think sometimes people say, why do writers in Sri Lanka not write about the war? And I think possibly because they're living it and know how complex it is to portray, and that it's and people do write about the things that concern them, but they don't necessarily hammer it over the head, but no, we will see how the arts changes over time.
It's strange that you say that, because one of the authors who came for the previous festival, Sugi, who wrote A Love Marriage, which is a work of fiction at the end of the day, but suggested that the work of fiction was taken as a work of fact, because it had to do with 1983, because it had to do with the Tamil community, because it had to do with diaspora. How has the Galle, or if the Galle Festival has being charged with an accusation of playing to some of these concerns. I mean, have you had to negotiate any unpleasantness in
I'm not sure I completely understand the question.
In terms of the literary festival, in a country of war, have you...
Whether it's
exactly.
frivolity?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, of course, this is a question that I have asked myself, because there are times, I have to admit, where it's felt surreal to be organizing a literary festival with everything else that's going on.
But is it important to do it?
I think it's important to make things, however small, to continue to make things. And that's as far as I can go with, that's as far as I've made sense of it. I think it is important to make things and to start conversations off, even if, regardless of what exactly, not regardless, but they are all tangential conversations sometimes to the main that is concerning us. But I do think it's important to make things.
And is that, I don't know what, for want of a better term, legacy, or is that what you want to leave behind? The idea of a festival that started conversations, that maybe built bridges, that, I don't know, I mean...
I'm not thinking of legacy. I'm not thinking of legacy.
But, I mean...
not nearly so grandiose.
But do you feel that it's made those connections? I mean, I've met many people, I mean, this is not by way of, just...
I think you should ask that question at the festival in 15 years' time.
Do you think it'll be around?
I very much hope so.
What do you think you will be doing 15 years down the line? I mean, I know that we've spoken about theatre, you wanting to go back to theatre in Sri Lanka, but also maybe anywhere else. I mean, is that something that you feel you are now primed to do more?
Well, I mean, firstly, I have no idea where I'll be in 15 years' time. Next year is, it's the start. I don't want to go back to theatre as such, but 2 years ago, I wanted to make a break from theatre. I wanted a break from theatre. I wanted to work in other media. And I do miss it. And I am interested in possibly doing theatre projects again. The theatre that I do is not about directing plays as such. I once directed a very bad play, as in it was a very bad production of a very good play. And I was bored all the way through it. And I'm sure that the production showed that. And it's the piece of work that I'm least proud of. And I thought, what is it about this that's not moving me? And I think possibly because the main of my work has been working with playwrights and working on the plays while they, from the very early stages, that I'd become so involved in the genesis of a play. That was what interested me more, in a sense, than taking a play that had been written and directing it. It's also that possibly I am not good at that. Other people are really excellent at that. So I started working with on a version of verbatim theatre, which was working. We had a production date. We had publicity. We knew that the show was going to go on. There's nothing like that pressure. 6 weeks hence. And so then I'd go through a workshop process where. And initially I did this with 5 teenagers with vastly different life experiences, all living in one city, and where we went through a process where I led workshops with them, and everything was recorded. Absolutely everything was recorded and everything was transcribed. And then we put together a show based on the transcriptions and that was about their lives, and they performed it themselves, and they had an absolute veto as to what could go in and needed to come out, and that process I find exhilarating. And because you're very aware of what you're making, you're very, it's ethically complicated because these people are performing their own lives. And I'd like to work on versions of that again.
Do you write yourself?
I do write, but only quietly at the moment, only quietly, and I hope to do more of that.
Prose, verse?
Prose.
Prose. Any particular genre?
Well, fiction at the moment. But perhaps I'll move on to fact one day.
Memoirs of the Galle Lit Festival, perhaps.
No, certainly not.
Certainly not.
I don't think that would be that